Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Felicity Ezewike. Let's bring you stories making headlines beyond the continent. We'll begin with news in the Middle East, where Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, following his meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in a video statement issued by his office, says he aims to release the maximum number of living hostages held in Gaza as part of the first phase of a ceasefire agreement with Hamas. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum campaign group, which has previously accused the Israeli side of sabotage, thanked Blinken for his unwavering support alongside U.S. President Joe Biden's administration to finalize the hostage deal.
מקסימום מספר חטופים חיים, ואני מבקש להדגיש, מאמצים לשחרור מקסימום מספר חטופים חיים כבר בשלב הראשון של העסקה.
Israel's military says the bodies of 6 hostages being held by Hamas have been retrieved from the Gaza Strip on Tuesday. In a statement from the Israel Defense Forces IDF, the bodies were recovered from the Khan Yunis area on Monday. The overnight recovery operation was carried out by the IDF alongside the security agency Shin Bet. The men had been kidnapped from a town near Israel's border fence with Gaza during Hamas attacks on southern Israel on October 7.
The families of our dear hostages were informed. Then the Prime Minister shared that overnight our brave forces returned the bodies of 6 of our hostages that have been held by the murderous Hamas terrorists: Avram Munda, age 79, Alex Danzig, age 76, Chaim Peri, age 79, Yagev Buchstav, age 34, Yoram Metzger, aged 80, and Nadav Popplewell, aged 51, all of blessed memory.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Egypt on Tuesday as part of his latest Middle East tour to push forward talks aiming to end the 10-month Gaza war. Blinken is set to hold talks with the Egyptian president and foreign minister in the coastal city of El Alamein following a visit to Israel, where he met Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. For more on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, thanks for joining us. The negotiations are ongoing to reach a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. What can you tell us about the progress of these negotiations?
Top diplomat arrived in Cairo earlier on today, but those negotiations, those talks of a ceasefire that looked so positive at the end of last week, are pretty much on a knife edge at the moment. Now, we did see that statement from Benjamin Netanyahu, where the Israeli Prime Minister, where he's saying that, you know, his aim would be to free as many hostages as possible in that first phase of the ceasefire. However, Hamas has said that the latest bridging proposal that it's called bridging the gaps between a disagreement on both sides on this ceasefire deal doesn't include a permanent ceasefire and introduce new conditions in the prisoner exchange. Hamas has also accused the United States of embracing Israeli demands and trying to impose them on themselves. In their own statement on Tuesday, they said Biden and Blinken's statements are misleading claims that do not reflect the true position of the movement, which is keen to reach a cessation of aggression. We consider these statements a renewed American green light for the government of Zionist extremists to commit more crimes against defensive civilians and in the pursuit of the goals of exterminating and displacing our people. So that's what Hamas have said in relation to the ceasefire deal that is on the table. Now, both the United States and Benjamin Netanyahu there seem to be quite positive that a deal is imminent and that it could be coming in the coming days or even coming hours. Hamas saying the opposite. So despite Antony Blinken taking that trip to Cairo, trying to calm tensions in the region, it doesn't look like we are actually any closer to a ceasefire deal than we were perhaps last week, whereas Friday we thought it was a bit more positive. We also have to remember that if we don't reach a ceasefire at this point in the conflict between Israel and Gaza, where tensions across the region are so high, and that's tensions between Iran and Israel as well. Israel under attack from Iran and Hamas furious about the killing of two of their top leaders, which happened inside Iran, and Iran seeking retaliation for that. Without a ceasefire deal between Israel and Gaza, tensions in the region could ratchet up exponentially in the coming days.
What more can you tell us about the bodies of the hostages that was recovered last night from Gaza?
Yeah, so 6 hostages were recovered from Gaza yesterday, 6 Israeli hostages. Now, they didn't release details immediately of the operation, but we did find out that all the residents, all the 6 men that were taken, they were alive when they were taken. Mundar, who was 69, Metzger, who was 80, and Perry, who was 80. They were all residents of kibbutz near Oz. That's near the Gaza border. Mundar was taken along with his wife, his daughter, and his grandson, who were actually free during the temporary ceasefire in November. And Metzger's wife was also kidnapped and released in that November truce also. Now, Popwell, who was 51 when he was abducted, Popwell is the dual British-Israeli citizen, actually died more than a month earlier of that rescue, and that was a wound sustained after an Israeli airstrike hit the place where he was being held. And the IDF also said in July that Buchstab was believed to have been held in Khan Yunis and died several months ago, again in an IDF operation.
Javier, thank you for speaking with us. In Oceania, Australia and Indonesia cemented a landmark new defense pact, pledging closer cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region as a new leader prepares to take over in Jakarta. The pact, which includes provisions for joint drills and deployments to each country, was unveiled during Indonesian Defense Minister and President-elect Prabowo Subianto's visit to Canberra. Prabowo takes the reins of the world's third-largest democracy in October 20. Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles said the Defence Pact was one of the most significant agreements ever negotiated between the two nations. Australia also hopes to cement close ties as the region is riven by rivalry between China and the United States.
The former Governor-General, His Excellency David Hurley, pinned by a deep and...
This agreement will be the deepest, the most significant agreement that our two countries have ever made. And when you consider the journeys of Indonesia and Australia over the decades, it is profoundly historic that we have reached this moment where we find security in each other. The map really determines that Australia and Indonesia, as the closest of neighbours, have a shared destiny. But from this moment forth, that destiny is very much defined by deep strategic trust.
I think we are very happy today to have several decades of very close cooperation, and I am determined to continue this good neighbor relationship. Of course, I will continue the general policies of President Joko Widodo, in which Australia plays a very important role for us. I view the drugs problem and the narcotics threat to be of the highest importance in Indonesia.
To North America, where we understand that President Joe Biden has endorsed Kamala Harris to defeat Donald Trump in the November election during his emotional farewell speech at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The 81-year-old, who quit the White House race in July, urged Americans to put a prosecutor in the Oval Office instead of a convicted felon, referring to one of Harris' previous roles.
And I'm all for Kamala Harris going to an abortion clinic or saying that she's for caring about the civilians on the ground in Gaza. The problem is that 50 years of Democratic Party administrations among them, we have still lost ground on our bodily autonomy in this country. So words alone, promises, they're not enough. We need action.
We want to let the Democrats know that their vote is not something that is a given from the people, it's something that is earned. They have to show us that they're here to support our interests and not that of their corporate donors.
Any rights activist, I don't care what field you are in, if you're not in solidarity with people of Gaza and Palestine right now while a genocide is going on, then you are totally bankrupt as a rights activist. You cannot be in favor of your own liberation if you're not.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says she is forever grateful to President Joe Biden as she addressed the opening of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Biden officially passed the torch to Harris as the party's nominee for November's election and was treated to a huge ovation as he took to the stage.
It's going to be a great week.
Let's go on a short break. We have more stories when we return. Let's now tell you that former U.S. President and Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has unleashed attacks against U.S. Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris and her running mate. During a rally in York, Pennsylvania, Trump claimed U.S. President Joe Biden had been deposed in a coup orchestrated by Harris.
Policy in Kamala Harris's radical liberal playbook sends jobs and wealth to other countries. The jobs go to other countries and the wealth goes to other countries. Every policy in the Trump agenda is designed to bring the jobs and wealth back home to America where it belongs and where it's going to stay. Kamala puts America last. I put America first. Under her plan, manufacturers will pay even higher taxes in America than in communist China. By contrast, I will pass gigantic tax cuts for workers and keep their jobs here in the United States. They're going to stay here. We're going to beat everybody. We're going to beat them like a drum.
In Central America, Panama has on Tuesday deported 29 Colombians with criminal records who entered the country through the inhospitable Darien jungle, applying for the first time an agreement on migration signed with the United States in July. According to the Panamanian Vice Minister of Security, Luis Felipe Icaza, the first flight of the agreement, financed by the United States after the charter flight took off at dawn from the Albrook Airport in the capital, with the 29 deportees bound for Bogota. Icaza said that the next flight could depart on Friday or Saturday under the memorandum that Panama signed with the United States on July 1, the day that Jose Raul Mulino took office as the new president.
Inmigrantes de nacionalidad colombiana, uno de muy alto perfil, el Clan del Golfo, y nosotros estamos cumpliendo con la seguridad nacional.
Darien no es una ruta, es muy trágico lo que pasa por ahí. Las personas no deben de venir por aquí, por esta ruta. Si ellos tienen manera de llegar a los Estados Unidos legalmente, se deben de acoger a esas medidas. También
estamos trabajando con Colombia, todos son el proceso de deportación que se está llevando. Estamos haciendo las coordinaciones con otras nacionalidades, por ejemplo, con Ecuador. También estamos haciendo un acercamiento con India. Y el tema de Venezuela, pues...
In Europe, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Kyiv's ban on Russian-linked religious organizations would boost his country's independence over 2 years into Moscow's invasion that accelerated a religious fallout between the neighbors. According to Zelensky on social media, a law on the spiritual independence has been adopted. He also adds that the government would continue to strengthen Ukraine and the society.
Я хочу сьогодні відзначити роботу Верховної Ради. Ухвалено закон щодо нашої духовної незалежності. Це те, про що ми говорили з членами Ради церков та релігійних організацій. І днями я буду говорити також з представниками Вселенського патріарха Варфоломія. Ми будемо і надалі зміцнювати Україну, наше суспільство.
Divers have on Tuesday spent a second day searching for 6 people believed to be trapped when a luxury yacht sank off the Italian island of Sicily, including a British tech tycoon, colleagues and his teenage daughter. Recall that the 56-meter sailing yacht, the Oceania, was anchored some 700 meters from port with 10 crew and 12 passengers on board when it was struck by a watersport. A sort of a mini tornado before dawn on Monday. The 6 missing people include Jonathan Bloomer, the chair of Morgan Stanley International, and his wife Judy, as well as UK IT entrepreneur and investor Mike Lynch and his 18-year-old daughter Hannah. To Health Matters, the World Health Organization leading expert says Mpox is not the new COVID because authorities clearly know how to control its spread. Dr. Hans Kluge, Regional Director for Europe, told reporters that although there is genuine concern about a new virus type and a worldwide warning, we can and must combat Mpox collectively. In recent months, Mpox connected to clade 1b has killed at least 450 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The doctor said no clade 1b cases have been seen in the UK. He, however, warned it can spread unless international action is taken. A different variant was behind the 2022 outbreak that initially affected Europe and continues to circulate in many parts of the world. As said to Asia, where China's foreign ministry spokesperson says the United States has no right to intervene in its maritime dispute with the Philippines after another clash near a disputed reef in the South China Sea. In response to a pool of Hong Kong journalists that showed press freedom sinking to a record low, spokesperson Mao Ning defended the city's national security law, saying it targets criminals and not law-abiding media reporters.
Return money to Russian importers for goods already received. There were cases when banks
技术立志为自己国家解决粮食问题贡献力量的故事。发言人对此有何评论？能否？
美国不是南海问题的当事方，无权介入中非两国之间的涉海问题，更不得以美非共同防御条约为借口侵害中国在南海的主权和权益。美方应当停止在南海挑动对抗，不要再破坏地区稳定，加剧局势紧张。我可以告诉你的是，香港国安法针对的是极少数严重危害国家安全的犯罪分子，而不是遵纪守法的媒体记者。香港国安法实施以来，香港的新闻自由在安全稳定的环境下依法获得更好的保障，这是任何不带偏见的人都无法否认的事实。
India's Supreme Court has on Tuesday ordered a national task force to examine how to bolster security for healthcare workers after the horrific rape and murder of a doctor sparked medical strikes and furious protests. The discovery of the 31-year-old doctor's bloodied body at a state-run hospital in the eastern city of Kolkata on August 9 has stoked nationwide anger at the chronic issue of violence against women. Doctors' associations from government-run hospitals in many cities across India have launched multiple strikes that cut non-essential services with protests in their second week. Calling the details horrific, the 3-judge panel noted in its judgment that the brutality of the sexual assault and the nature of the crime have shocked the conscience of the nation. And finally, Patients at surrounding hospitals wait in line for treatment in a dimly lit pedestrian underground in New Delhi, while Indian doctors stand in protest against the rape and killing of a colleague. Orisa Khatun dreads her son might die without treatment, with doctors from government-run hospitals entering a second week of strikes, withholding non-essential services and demanding justice for their comrade and better security for themselves. 65-year-old Khatun has been anxiously waiting for the past 10 days for an appointment at a top state-run hospital, the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences.
हड़ताल है नहीं तो माता जी घर जाइए आज जब हड़ताल टूटेगा तो फोन करेंगे आपको तो फोन करेगा जब तो लड़का खत्म हो जाएगा तो बोला कि ठीक है जब हड़ताल टूटेगा तो आपका ऑपरेशन होगा आप कब हड़ताल टूटेगा नहीं टूटेगा कब ऑपरेशन होगा बच्चा नर्वस भी ले जा रहा बेसी
अभी हड़ताल है तो अब अगला महीना का डेट दिया है 23 तारीख का ऊपर से कहते हैं डॉक्टर की कोई गारंटी नहीं है आप कहीं भी करवा सकते हैं अब डॉक्टर कहते हैं कब तक हड़ताल रहेगा नहीं रहेगा कोई पता नहीं है अब बड़े वाले डॉक्टर लोग बैठवे नहीं करते हैं अब बड़े वाले डॉक्टर से हम रिक्वेस्ट ही करते हैं तो कहते हैं अभी कुछ भी नहीं कहो हमको एक तरह से सही तो नहीं है
And that is all at this hour. Do send your eyewitness reports to the number showing now on your screen. You can do this as well by following us on social media at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and on YouTube. Thank you for watching.